Certainly did, yeah.
But that was powerful stuff, wasn't it? And it really positive for them to see that the first time they actually got into attacking position, the first time they'd had a set where they'd had more than one play of the ball in the Leeds half, was they were able to score. So that then set us up for what could become an entertaining game, because up to that point it had kind of been one-sided, and I kind of felt like the only thing that's not quite right here is Leeds aren't further ahead.
Yeah, they were dominant, weren't they? And not that it set the tone for the game, but the damage was done by that point for me. Hull got plucky, and it got to 6-12 at half time, didn't it?
Well, Hull got plucky and Jake Connor got kind of skillful, didn't he?
Yeah.
The two biggest Jake Connor moments of the game, actually, for me, I mean, I know he also set up the Seeker Manu try with a back, but he wasn't really under pressure under that situation. But the offload that he managed to pull out of the bag for Fanua, that one-handed carry that sort of makes it almost impossible for a defender to get around where he's going to go with the ball.
Yeah.
Was just absolutely brilliant to put Fanua through. Far better than Fanua's dancing. But then the other Jake Connor moment, which shows how pricky he is, was the ridiculous dive to try and con an obstruction in the build-up to the...
Yeah, you lose my sympathy at that point.
To the Brad Singleton no try, which was a no try. There was no camera angle that made it even look like the ball got down.
No.
Emma wasn't impressed by Fanua's dancing either.
Well,
No.
And is she the barometer of good dancing? Or is it that she's such a bad dancer that if she's not impressed...
She had random comments about this game.
Right.
That was one of them.
His dancing was shocking.
Yeah.
Not that that's what West are going to be paying him for next year.
No. But, unbelievably, I felt, for me, in terms of how the whole game had gone, Hull actually took the lead.
Yeah.
And it still felt... And it was from a kick, by the way. You know, classic. It still sort of felt like they hadn't quite got the game together. They weren't quite playing the circumstances properly, but they still managed to score enough points to get a lead, which was boded well for them. With like 20 minutes left, and probably with, I think Taylor and Ellis had been reintroduced at that point, which did help turn the tide. But Watt's still to come back on fresh, and then probably another spell from Bowden before the end, and really good chance for forward dominance that'll set a good platform with a lead, and that's just not what happened.
No.
It's
almost like they got the lead and then expected that it would just carry on.
Exactly, yeah. And in actual fact,
the reverse.
It was like Leeds started playing a little bit more exciting stuff to get their try, the Sutcliffe try.
Yeah.
Another one that wasn't awesome defending, didn't cover themselves in glory necessarily with it, but it was a good strong work try for Liam Sutcliffe. And then Hull just didn't threaten enough. They didn't ever make me feel like the try was coming. I know they had one ruled out correctly, and that was again from another kick, but the back down went the wrong way. But I don't know. What do you feel?
I think this is a very good microcosm of Hull's season, is this semi-final, where there's been flashes and periods of time where they've played like absolute world beaters, but there's been equally as many times where they've been the architects of their own downfall, either through not seeing things off and not finishing properly, and this is a season in which they won the Challenge Cup as well, bear in mind, but at times throughout the league season they've let themselves out of games and they've let teams off the hook, and I think they let Leeds off the hook at this point. I think they got themselves out into a lead and should have pressed home their advantage, and actually it was, as you said, it was Leeds that came out, because Leeds were forced to play at that point. Leeds had to do something different, had to start trying to score points to get back in front, and Hull had no answer for it. Hull didn't redouble their efforts to try and extend the lead. It almost felt like they were prepared to defend the lead, and we've seen that time and time again in rugby league, where if you defend the lead or try to defend the lead, you come unstuck. And
the strange scenario in it for me a little bit was the scoreline was close. It was, it was probably closer for longer than the scoreline was in the other game, where there was decent leads built up a couple of times. But it never felt as tense. It never felt as... Maybe part of that was the atmosphere and the eeriness of no stand, but part of it was because Hull just weren't executing all the time. They weren't dominating in the forward pack like we'd expect them to. They weren't putting on any of the pet plays necessarily.
Yeah.
And I also didn't feel like there was huge confidence all of the time.
Maybe part of this is something that we should be looking at Leeds over there. Maybe we should be crediting the likes of Garbett, Singleton, Stevie Ward, Jones Buchanan, Cuthbertson, Ablett. Maybe we should be crediting these guys with fronting up to this whole pack.
Singleton was massive, wasn't he?
Preventing them from laying any kind of platform for Hull's halves and cutting them off at source.
Yeah, Singleton.
That's something we need to look at.
Singleton and Jones Buchanan, in particular, were sort of massive units in getting in stuff.
Yeah.
And Garbett did what he does as well, which helps swing the momentum in your sort of team's favour. When you've got someone who can trundle metres out of nowhere every time, never seems to lose collision. And a lot of that comes off how good Matty Parcell's playing.
Yeah, Matt Parcell's
how quickly he can get the ball out to people, and how much zip he's got, and Rob Burrow, when he spells him, kind of puts other teams on the back foot, even if they've won the Brook sometimes.
Yeah. No, I agree completely with you, absolutely. And I think that's what shut Hull FC down for periods of time in this game.
Yeah. I mean, there was that, and there was the fact that Hull made quite a lot of errors.
Well, yes, there is that too. So what did the stats tell us then?
They say the penultimate game of the season, saw the most offloads of any game this season with 37. Leeds won that count 21-16 and also edged total metres, but only by 90 metres, as both sides had more than 1,300 metres. Tackle success was fairly low quality for both sides, 91% for Leeds and 92% for Hull, when the league average over the whole season was 93%. Hull created 7 breaks to 4, but made 15 errors to 8, a number that ultimately had a negative impact on them. Basically, whenever they did start to get something going, errors came. Whereas Leeds managed to make offloads stick or find runners or what have you. That's how it felt.
There you go.
To me.
Individually, who stood out?
Stevie Ward had a try and 40 tackles, 10 marker tackles before his sad injury with 10-15 minutes or so to go. He's nailed on for the captain of that side next year for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Adam Cuthbert's 157 metres, 8 clean breaks. That probably should be 8 offloads. 8 offloads. Mitch Garbett.
You'd expect him to at least get one of those.
Yeah, because Leeds did get 8 clean breaks.
Total. Mitch
Garbett, 166 metres. Ryan Hall, a try assist. Good interplay working up for that. Sutcliffe try, wasn't it? And 139 metres, 2 clean breaks. Jack Walker, 138 metres, 3 successful offloads. I mean, he was kind of monstered in the Gareth Ellis try.
Yeah.
Sort of unsurprising with the way Ellis hit that ball. But he stood up the rest of the time.
Yeah. That's it. I don't think there's many people would stand up to that Gaz Ellis.
No.
At that point. Individually for Hull?
Well, Mahe Fanua had a real big influence with some positive stats. He also tried to dive for a penalty at the end of the game that he didn't get, and then that was kind of that for... Good, I'm glad for the chances of the black and whites, which kind of is a shame in a way that his time there ends like that, but he's fallen over for so many penalties that he's been given that fair enough. Mahe Fanua with a try, 9 tackles, 168 metres and 3 clean breaks, so he did put in a big shift. It's just a shame that last thing was that thing. Seakamano would try 49 tackles, 13 marker tackles and 100 metres, so big contribution all round. I think
Seakamano is so important to that team.
He's arguably been... He's in the conversation for the best player of the year. I think he won their player of the year at their club awards, didn't he? And he doesn't play 80 minutes every week. In fact, he hardly ever does, but he always puts in a big effort, a big contribution, and then you notice when he's off the pitch. And people talk a lot about when Ellis is off the pitch, when Taylor's off the pitch, when Watts is off the pitch.
Yeah.
But usually, when 2 of those 3, at least, are off the pitch, Seakamano is also off the pitch.
Yeah.
And although Danny Washbrook's done a good job and was unfortunate to miss out on selection for this side, as a sort of stand-in, he's not offered the same level of impact, has he? Gareth Ellis with a try, 48 tackles, 11 marker tackles, 2 clean breaks. Mark Minicello with 129 metres and 5 successful offloads, and Carlos Tumavave 104 metres.
There you go. Okay, so we know the grand final lineup. All that we needed to figure out this weekend was who was going to be the final team to take up a place in Super League for 2018, and down at the Leigh Sports Village, Despite leading 10-4 at one point, the Centurions went down 10-26 to the Catalan Dragons, who played that game out in front of 6,888, refereed as it was by Ben Thaler.
Mitchell Darts, we start with. Sacre Bleu. Catalans survived. Lee's second half was an implosion and a sad way to see them go out. Lee going down is disappointing, as I think they're a great club to have in the competition. It's not the end of the world for them, whereas not sure we see Catalans again for a long time if they drop. Having said that, not sure much changes for Catalans. Going to be fighting for survival in the qualifiers again next year.
Possibly so. Tyler Casfan, you got a feel for Tyler, said Lee started very well and were on top for the first 20, but didn't affect the scoreboard enough in the second half. They were full of errors and penalties and played really dumb. Constant defending took all their energy, and Catalans played much smarter and deserved the win. There, I've said it.
Sarah says Lee failed to respect the ball. They picked up an early lead and simply needed to continue in the same way. Instead, they gave away penalty after penalty, and ultimately even Josh Griffin wouldn't have been able to save them.
Mark W says Catalans didn't really have to do much to win this. Lee just got desperate and self-imploded. If they got a few more points when they were dominating at the start, they'd still be a Super League club, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be. They also think they'll make a good challenge for promotion next year, though.
Roger the Cabin Boy said, "Now then, lads," I assume this is Cutthroat Jake using
you would think so, yeah.
"Now then, lads, Lee going back to where they belong. Don't understand the whining. How does this differ from the straight relegation we used to have? If anything, instead of automatic relegation, where if you come bottom, you go down, this gives the advantage to the Super League teams. The Championship teams can only get promotion by defeating the Super League teams, and that should be better than them."
There you go.
I probably meant to put that later on, actually, because we end these reviews with a talking point session on the existence of the £1 million game, which might even be moot, because, you know, if the structure changes from 2019, what is the £1 million game next year?
Yeah.
But anyway.
Okay, Ollie Smith says, I think the quality of this game showed why both teams are where they are. Not much in the two sides apart from a bit of extra class in spells from the Dragons. Pleased for them on staying up and a good win for Rugby League as well.
Dom Hodgson said, "This was Lee's to lose, and so they did. A shame for the fans, but I still believe it's better for the sport as a whole if Catalans stay up, at least for the next few years."
There you go. Paul Ludo Lewis. Lee relegated due to a bad discipline. Shocker. A pretty poor game with both teams looking understandably nervous. In fact, the best player was Tierney, as he knew he'd either be back at Wigan or at Dennis Betts' diet Wigan next year. Beaumont gave a great interview after the match. Unlike the players from both sides who acted like the whole relegation was something they hadn't known about all year, I blame Hull KR.
Paul O'Brien said, "An awful game to be part of. Both teams looked nervous. Lee played well in the first half, but poor discipline cost them in the second. Feel for Lee fans."
There you go. David Pye said, I thought Lee looked stronger and it would have been the same old Catalans, but they executed well in the second half. Lee didn't help themselves. At times trying too hard to win penalties rather than score points was for me their downfall. Then ill discipline crept in and Catalan ultimately turned the screw, meaning the scoreboard got away from them.
Yeah, we'll do this last one from Bernard and then we'll leave the final three to sort of after we've talked about the game, because they're more about the concept of the £1 million game.
Yeah.
So Bernard says, ultimately I prefer the team that actually fills their stadium to stay in Super League. Viva Catalunya.
There you go. Short and sweet and to the point. Look, I'll be completely honest, Saturday was IKEA day for me, so I was trundling around IKEA Warrington following this one on Twitter. I have seen the tries, but I am guessing you're going to be able to add more colour than I can.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first half was very much poor.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of scoring, there wasn't a lot of opportunities being created. Probably both tries were scored from well executed moves. Catalan had basically tried to execute a move well for about the last 25 minutes of the first half.
Right.
And finally got one to execute properly and scored with Ian Thornley in the corner. Lee's play was really well executed early on, but that was probably the smoothest they looked through the whole game. They never really earned position after that.
Yeah.
They maybe got position a few times from diving for a few penalties. That came back to bite them in the arse in the second half when Catalan decided to use that against them and dive for a couple of their own.
Right.
Which were even more convincingly penalties than the ones Lee had dived for, I felt. And other than that first 10 minutes or so when Lee did look like they could execute, after that they looked completely out of energy. They did have people out of this side.